Can NBC make it up at this point, or is this just a ship that has sailed? Is it too far gone?
That's a great question. I think ultimately it's going to be up to our candidates. I think they were very disappointed with what went down at CNBC in Colorado. There were certain assurances that were given to them that were not upheld. And I think rightly so, the RNC made it very clear that another NBC property is not going to host another debate until our candidates feel confident that that certain assurances are given and that they feel confident they're going to be upheld. If they don't, then no, it's not going to move forward.
Right. What did you think when you were watching this debate unfold? CNBC, I think a lot of people were expecting that they were going to be wonky, maybe economic. I mean, because it is an economic debate, But because that NBC relationship, I guess all that bias seeped through, and I think our candidates ended up looking a lot better than the moderators and the network itself.
Oh, that's absolutely true. I think the candidates did do a phenomenal job despite the harsh circumstances. And I think you've noted this before, but this is not about taking hard questions. This is about taking silly questions. These candidates were up there. They're seeking the presidency of the United States. It was billed as a financial debate. Talk about the economy, jobs. Things are important to people's well-being in the United States. And if you watch CNBC on a daily basis, it's a financial network. They talk about pocketbook issues, the stock market. They've held debates every 4 years for the last, in modern history. So there's every reason to expect that they would do the same degree of professional economic type debate that they've held in the past. And unfortunately, they failed miserably.
Right. Not a single question as to how Obamacare premiums, the penalties, et cetera, how that is affecting business owners, how it's affecting the middle class at an economic debate. But they got in a question about fantasy football, so they got that covered.
And a good comic book reference, too. But you're right. It wasn't just that. I mean, there was the list of questions that they didn't ask. Trade, tax reform. I mean, there were issue after issue that had to do with the economy and financial matters that just frankly weren't asked. And yet they found plenty of time to ask silly questions and factually inaccurate questions.
Right. Now for the folks who are watching, tell them, I mean, do you get, as the RNC, do you get to sit down, with these media entities and say, all right, we want all your questions, give them all to us because we're going to go down and vet every single one of these questions to make sure we like them? How does that process work?
Now, so our job is to negotiate the logistics of the debate, when, where, how. And in the same way that I'm doing this interview here with you today, you didn't tell me what you were going to ask. No journalist, conservative, liberal, quote unquote mainstream will ever tell you what they're going to ask. That's part of being a journalist. But you look and hope that they do their job and that they want to be fair, or at least have the appearance of being fair. So no, we would never ever interfere with anyone's editorial decisions. And again, that's whether you're a conservative. If you go on MSNBC, they're not going to tell you the questions. If you go on TheBlaze, they're not going to tell you the questions. Right. That's part of being a journalist. But I think you expect a level of professionalism and expertise with certain media outlets.
What do you make of some of the candidates? I read an article that was released just about an hour and a half ago. The Trump campaign tells WAPO that they're going to bypass the RNC, your group, altogether and just work directly with these media entities. What does that do in terms of logistics? Does that make it easier, more difficult? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, we've never wanted to be in the format business anyway. This has always been, and it always should be, a candidate-centric part of a debate. Because debates are about candidates, not about the RNC, not about a political party. And so I think the candidates should be involved, and we've tried to help facilitate that. The bigger problem, Dana, is that we started with 17 candidates, and now we're down to 15. And so we've tried to help facilitate that discussion with the networks. But I encourage these candidates, they should be on the phone. They should be protecting their interests. That's their job. My job and the job of the chairman of the party and others here at the RNC is to try to find areas of consensus that the candidates agree on and help push those areas forward. But it's not that this has never been about wresting control or taking over. It's always been about the candidates. It always should be about the candidates, and they always should have that kind of control.